My name is Jim. This is Baby Boomer Tales. I want to talk to you today about friendship and best friends. By far and away, for the majority of my 60, almost 9 years on this earth, my best friend has been my wife. But over those 69 years, I have had 3 friends in different eras of my life that I like to think of as my best friends. The first one was Wayne, and I spoke about him in our very first episode on Baby Boomer Tales. And his friendship went from the first day of kindergarten to approximately 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, when I never saw him except one more time again. The second friendship, and the one I'd like to speak about today, is my friend Dave. We knew each other starting at a pretty young age. His parents either bought or built a new house in town, and I remember him. He was fairly young. I was a little bit older. And him and his brother John would come and we'd play football in the park for hours and hours and hours, a bunch of us kids. And Dave was a very good athlete, and he won some kind of punt, pass, and kick competition. Remember those? So he came play football one day with helmet and shoulder pads and all that stuff. And so next thing you know, a bunch of us had helmets and shoulder pads. And we played a pretty rough brand of football, and it was fun. During baseball season, we'd play baseball in the park for hours and hours. And Dave's dad was actually our Little League coach. I remember very well Dave's dad coaching us. I was the catcher. I always wanted to be where the action was, and I was not a good enough pitcher to even think of being the pitcher, but I was the catcher. Every once in a while, a foul tip, or I misjudged the ball or something, it hit me in the gut and knocked the air out of me. And I remember bending over with Dave's dad holding me, trying to catch my breath. He was a great coach. Dave was a natural athlete, and he excelled at all those kind of things. And as we got older and we got too old to play football and baseball in the park, we went on to things like high school football and basketball. And there was no baseball up in the mountains back then. Once Little League was done, you were pretty much done with baseball, unless as you got older you played softball. As I turned 16, I bought a bass guitar, and I've talked about kind of inherited my parents' family station wagon. And Dave and his brother John, Dave was the drummer and John was the guitar player, and we had a couple other guys. We had Tim and Mike, and we formed a band, and we played little venues here and there, and we even played a big venue a couple times at the 3-2 beer bar in town. And they have like a teens night or something. It wasn't when all the 18-year-olds were there drinking beer. It was teens night, and we'd pack the place out a couple times. We played for school dances and things, and we really thought we were something. I know we weren't very good. I know I wasn't very good. I'm not very musical, but I had the car to transport all the equipment, and I had the bass. And so I was in the band. Dave always reminded me of Dennis Wilson, the drummer for the Beach Boys. Kind of looked like Dennis Wilson, kind of acted like Dennis Wilson. He was a pretty good drummer. One time the band, Dave's dad, let me call him Bill. He was a great guy. He took us all to Denver to Paul Revere and the Raiders concert. I think Bill just sat there and watched it while we thought we were cool. Now, we never all dressed alike or anything like the bands did in 65 and 66. So we're a little ahead of our time there. What we liked in being musical, we made up for in what we thought was cool. As we got older and getting out of high school and all that. Dave and I hung around quite a bit, and this is the time when he actually became my best friend during that era. We played pool constantly. His parents had a pool table. We played ping pong and would get into these tremendous bets and it turn into double or nothings. And usually Dave was on the winning end of those, and somehow I'd win one and get my money back. And no cash ever changed hands, but if it did, I'd still be paying it off. But the one thing we did the best, I think, is played frisbee. Now, it wasn't frisbee like ultimate frisbee or frisbee golf. It was probably more like beach frisbee. We had master frisbees, which were larger than the frisbees I see anymore around. And we'd throw it back and forth for hours. And the main thing was how you caught it. Catch it behind your back, run with the frisbee and let it catch up with you, and kick your heel up behind you and kick that frisbee up over your shoulder and catch it. Catch it between your legs or running away from it between your legs. One night I remember the best time playing frisbee with Dave. It was dark. The moon must have been out. And we were at the park. And we were kind of under one street light. And we played frisbee in the park in the dark for hours. The white frisbee, I had a white frisbee. I have that same frisbee today. And every time I look at that frisbee, I think of Dave. We were pretty good frisbee players, but we also went fishing a lot. That's the one thing I could do better than him. I could fish better than him. And we'd fish all over the place. Go to the lakes, go to rivers, go up in the mountains and try to catch brook trout out of the little streams. One time we were clear up on this mountain pass. It wasn't paved or anything. It was an old dirt road. And we got clear up there and we were watching these beavers down beaver ponds down below. And as we were driving, all of a sudden the road kind of gave out and I was driving my truck. You have to have four-wheel drive trucks back then. And it sloughed kind of off the road and down the hill and came to rest on a tree stump, and we were stuck and could not get it out. And looking down in the draw, there was this camper. You could see it. It's probably way a mile and a half or so away. It's quite a ways away. So we walked down there, and as we got close, we could tell nobody was around, yelling, hello, hello. Nobody, nothing. Tried the door, and the door's open, and looked at each other and opened the door and yelled in there. Nothing. Went in there, and you could tell that nobody had been there for a long time. Opened the ice box. That was back in the days before these camp trailers had refrigeration. There was an ice box, and it was full of maggots. It had been that long that nobody was there, and the food was just full of maggots, and it was spooky. And first thing I could think is either someone got murdered up there or they got lost and no one reported them. So we made our way back up, somehow got back to town and called that in, the sheriff's department. Never did hear what happened. It was spooky. Had to go back up with Dave's truck and pull my truck out. I don't think it was Dave's truck. I think it was Ted's truck. Yeah, took Ted's truck out there and got me out. Up on the pass, looking at the beaver. Went camping a lot. One time we hiked to this lake called Crater Lake. It was way above tree line up by the Continental Divide. And when you get up there, there's a big lake that was caused by a meteor or something. But it was a serious hike up there. And we hauled in beer and steaks and stuff. It was not the smartest thing. We got up there and collapsed and laying there thinking, oh man, I'll never make it. And here came a friend of ours named Dan, who was an Olympic type skier, to say, great day for a walk, isn't it, guys? And he kept going. I looked at each other. Anyway, we set to camping and it started to rain. And we had these little bivouac tents, a one-person tent. And we stayed in our bivouac tents for 3 days as it rained, talking to each other. and you couldn't see each other. It was raining. I threw my bivouac tent away when I got home. 3 days up Crater Lake, just raining so much you couldn't even get out. Couldn't cook our steaks or anything. We also worked together. We put a roof on Dave's parents' one of their buildings downtown. Shoveled snow off of roofs up in that country. Some winters you just have to shovel the roofs off or the snow load gets too great. Did some carpentry. Dave taught me how to cook steak. I always thought you burned it. He taught me the art of you put it on and you turn it once. Now my wife taught me to eat steak medium. But Dave taught me how to cook it, and I cook pretty good steak these days. We each bought a Motobacan 10-speed bicycle from the outfitter there in town. They were nice bikes, and we'd ride all over the place. That was fun. That was back in the days before helmets and spandex shorts and stuff. We'd just ride around, have a good time. We had a lot in common, and I guess that's why we became such good friends. I mean, we knew each other for a very long time, and I never ever thought that we were best friends back then, but reflecting back over the years, he definitely was one of my all-time best friends. Sometimes we had the same taste in girls. Dave was the strongest guy I ever knew, the toughest guy I ever knew, although he's gentle as could be. He could throw a football, 60 yards. It was terrible playing catch with a football with him because I'd have to run up to him, throw it back, and he would say, go out for a pass, and he would throw it 60 yards. Finally, I got married in 1977, and Dave got married a year or so after that, and our paths kind of started taking a different course. We tried to do things together, but I'm sure some of you have experienced this, that it's not quite the same after you get married. We moved away from there, and I didn't see Dave again until 1993 at my father's funeral. He came up and he said some words to my mom, and of course I was really busy with everything with the funeral. So I went and saw him a few days later at his office, and we had a nice conversation. I stayed there maybe a half an hour and talking. And that's the last time I ever saw him. My friend Dave passed away yesterday. By the time this podcast hits, it'll be a week. He got sick in October, and I think they thought he would succumb to this much faster than he did. For some reason, the attachment I felt to him came flooding back to me during this time of his illness, and yesterday when he did finally pass away. And I wanted to give him a tribute because the flood of memories have been overwhelming me, and I was feeling so melancholy and extremely sad. And after I found out that he passed yesterday, it's like I released him, but I'll always love him. I think he was closer than a brother. He touched my life in many, many ways. I know that you can't go back, but I remember that time in my life with Dave so fondly, and it is so vivid that it seems real all over again. The part of me died yesterday also, and yet I lived so fulfilled by my friendship with Dave. I believe my friend touched a lot of people in probably the same way he touched me. You will be remembered, old friend. I hope he had a good life. Never forget, kindness matters. I'll be back next week.